Summer graduates, welcome back. I am on the road actually in Denver. We just got done speaking at a little school out in the middle of South Dakota.
Middle of nowhere, South Dakota.
Middle of nowhere. Mark Erickson and Alycia Wood and I. So let me introduce you to Alycia. Alycia, tell the grads a little bit about yourself, the ones who may not have heard you in the student conference.
Yeah, sure. Well, hi all. My name is Alycia. I hail from Rochester, New York, and live in Atlanta, Georgia now. And I've been working in apologetics now for over 10 years, and just love helping people as they wrestle through, is there anything to this Christian faith? You hear so many different things in the culture about how Christianity isn't needed anymore, and it's a bunch of fairy tales. And I love helping people process through, well, is it really just that, or is it more? And why it actually we want it to be true. So helping both Christians to feel more confident in their faith, and helping non-Christians to actually find it beautiful, actually, and find it attractive. So I like doing that.
So what was it that actually got you started in Christian apologetics? How did you end up on the circuit and one of our summit faculty? What was that journey like for you as a kid?
Yeah, so I was one of those annoying kids growing up who had like a million questions. So, they'd want to be like, okay, you finish your class, like math class, whatever, like we're done a little early today unless anybody else has any questions. And there's me, like I was always super inquisitive, and I just loved thinking and engaging with ideas and just analyzing things. I loved math, and so I think I just was naturally inquisitive about life. And I went to school as a criminal justice major, and I think, apologetics is a good fit for me because it's essentially, we're the investigators of the Christian world, right? We look to see, here's what the evidence says, what does it lead us to conclude? And you have to be careful because you don't want to misinterpret the evidence, and you don't want the evidence to take you where you want it to go. You need to be as objective as you can in response to it. And so I think it's just a really good fit for just me and my personality.
Yeah.
I discovered apologetics accidentally by picking up The Case for Faith by Lee Strobel in my school library when I was in college. I'd already been doing apologetics in the sense of like, I wanted to answer these questions and know more about answers to these questions, but I didn't know it was a field. It was just me personally, like I gotta be able to answer something when somebody asks me about suffering. Like, what can I say? Why would God allow it? And what about this? And I just had my own little notebook I would kind of compile, and then discovered that book. And I was like, oh, this is a field. Like people actually do this. And so that really was really eye-opening for me. And, I made it on the Summit circuit, I think just through different people, just maybe just connecting me with Summit. But what I've loved about Summit is the kids, the students that come there are so incredibly hungry for like information. Like they love learning these things. And so it's really fun to have just conversations with them, even after you speak, at the open forums, even at lunch or dinner, because they're just so hungry for more. And so it's just kind of a really fun experience to help them wrestle through some of these things as well.
Yeah. So we just got back from the student conference.
Yeah.
You said, I remember you telling me like, you really are a generalist.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
As an apologist, you're a generalist.
Yeah.
You kind of study broadly over many different topics. Like what?
Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, I think for me, I just get bored, actually. So I can only stay on one topic for so long before I'm like, okay, what's next? And so I just got to hop to the next one. I got to hop to the next one. But it's just because I think, too, the way I think through things is I'm always trying to keep up with where the culture is. What are the questions being asked now? What's happening out there that I can help build a bridge between Christianity and the culture? And so help the Christians understand the culture, engage with it, and help the culture to understand and engage with Christianity, Yeah. So I think for me, because the culture is always moving, I'm always kind of moving with it.
Yeah.
So it's the same gospel message, but it's like a pastor every Christmas has to share the same Christmas story, but in a different way. Yeah. And so I feel like you're just constantly taking the same gospel message and sharing it in different ways, different angles based on where the culture is at. And so that, as a result, that causes me to have to cover a variety of many topics. Plus, I'm also just a Q&A junkie. Yeah. So if you want to do Q&A, you got to learn about all kinds of things. And I love Q&A. I just would do it all the time. And I'm just so naturally inquisitive that I want to learn about everything. Yeah. So I think that's just kind of my natural proclivity, is just to study as much stuff as I can.
Yeah. What are you studying right now?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of the last year or so doing transgenderism, intersex, and that kind of thing, just helping the church process through a lot of the transgender stuff. But also the intersex thing was something that I think a lot of people didn't know what to deal with. Yeah. Does intersex mean you're both male and female? Which it doesn't mean that you're not both male and female. It's actually a different kind of medical condition. I think a lot of people realize it is. So kind of just doing a lot of dealing with that, because I know a lot of people had these questions and didn't really know where to go for answers.
Yeah.
But now I think I'm kind of sort of shifting to just, as I'm watching the culture, they've lost their foundation. We've been telling them for years that you don't need God. You can come up with morality on your own. You can come up with your own meaning. We've pulled them away from the thing that gave them value, which is a belief in the divine. And we told them that they can do it without God. And now what's happening is people have listened to that kind of teaching, and 15, 20 years on, they're like, actually, this is pretty hard. Actually, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's right or wrong. We don't know if we're male or female. We don't know who to love and who not to love. We are just in such complete, utter confusion because we've lost any foundation or grounding that gives us clarity to the confusion in our minds. And so I've just been observing a lot of that and just thinking through a lot of that. So that's kind of where I am right now, as I'm watching the culture's teachings fail the culture. Mm-hmm. They're fleeing that, maybe not necessarily coming to Christianity, but I think they're realizing what they're doing isn't working and they're looking for answers. And so I just kind of looking at that. I think the biggest example of that was the conversion of the new atheist, Ayaan Hirsi, who was a former Muslim turned new atheist and was with the whole Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens crew for so many years. And her conversion to Christianity recently, I think, was really powerful, of just showing the meaninglessness of life without God. And so I think that I found that to be like in line with what I was seeing in just the general culture as well.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. So what, as you're observing, what are people doing? Where are they going? If they're not quite coming to church yet to look for answers, what are they saying? What are they doing that's letting you know they're not finding satisfaction with the answers they've been given, with the life they're trying to live?
Yeah, I think when I just look at the culture, I see a lot of people are fighting, right? People are saying, this side is saying, you guys are wrong, and they're saying, well, you're wrong, but nobody really has a basis for understanding or has any background to say, whether or not the other side is wrong outside of fundamental religious beliefs. And once you bring in religion, people are like, well, I'm not listening to you, you're just religious, pushing your beliefs on me and this kind of thing. But you can't argue for anything in our culture unless you actually know you're actually right, and you're actually speaking truth. And so I think as I've just been observing and watching where people are going, I think I just see that we're so lost. And I hear people they're so tired. They're so tired of the fighting. They're so tired of the confusion. They're fleeing certain political parties. They want to flee to rural Montana to get away from the noise. Like, people are just tired and worn out, and we're not coming together. We're ripping apart at the seams. And so I think it's just a lot of observation and just in reading and seeing where different people are at. That's led me to that.
So how would you respond to somebody who really isn't that concerned with truth? They're more concerned with how they feel and feeling better and just feeling better. I mean, like, you asked an excellent question, would you rather? At the conference this weekend, you asked the students, would you rather hold on to something true even though it made you uncomfortable, or believe a lie even though you knew it was a lie, but because it made you feel good? And one of the girls was bold enough to say, I'd rather believe a lie if it made me feel good than believe the truth if it made me feel bad. I thought that was a fascinating question. And how do you meet somebody where they're at? Validate the fact that they're in pain, they're not feeling good about themselves or life, but then lead them to a place to see that it's the truth that makes all the difference.
So, I think oftentimes we say certain things that we haven't fully thought out. Or we say certain things that apply to this condition over here, but it would not apply to this condition over here. And this idea that I'd rather believe in something because it makes me feel good, I think, people can say that for certain things. But, if you're married or you're dating somebody, do you want to know if they truly do love you? Or do you want to know if they truly don't? Or do you want to continue living in a fairy tale, pretending or thinking, even though I know they don't love me, it makes me feel good to think that they do? I don't think that's really how we want to live life. I think we actually want to live life knowing reality and truth. And so I think one of the things that want to help people process through is we say these things, we don't fully mean them. Yeah, you might say that in terms of maybe when it comes to God, yeah, I'd rather just not believe because living my life makes me feel good. But when I say I love you to you, you want to know whether or not I mean it.
Yeah.
So you're not even consistent in yourself. And so I think one of the things I try and do is help people realize their inconsistencies, help them to realize that actually when your mother says, I love you, when your father says, I love you, or somebody you care about says, I love you, that it actually doesn't matter to you whether or not that's true. When your boss looks at you at work and says, hey, you've done a good job, you're a great employee, I'm so glad you're working for us. It's important for you to know that that's true. And so to say these kind of things, I think we use these kind of phrases when it comes to something we just don't want to believe in, or we don't accept because of whatever the ramifications are that come with it. Yeah. So I'm always trying to kind of help people to realize, is that really what you mean? Because let's think of what you mean. Let's apply to other situations. Is that really how you live your life?
Similar to Scott Klusendorf's trot out the toddler idea, where you apply these conditions to the baby inside the womb, but trot this whole thing out. And would you apply the same thing to a toddler outside the womb?
Okay.
So just kind of like, if this is your idea, let's explore all the implications of it.
Yes.
And
exactly.
If you really start looking at everything,
right,
you probably don't mean what you say.
You don't. Yeah. Exactly. No, you don't. And I think a lot of times people just don't think about it. So just pointing that out, I think, can be really helpful, and help people to realize, okay, how really do you want to live your life? How really do you want your interactions with others to look like? And I think that can be really helpful.
You exhibited that a little bit with some students that came up during one of the breaks and started asking you questions. And the question they first asked really wasn't their question.
No.
And I'm not even sure they knew what their question was, but you were patient, kind, you listened, and you helped them even figure out what their question really was.
Yeah.
So what are you listening for when you do that? How do you, like, these are student leaders, at least this group of 50 that we're going through, and some students, I hope, are striving to be influencers and in the sense of sharing Christ and loving people well. And so, like, what are some ways practically, like in conversation, you can do that? What are you listening for on some of those more practical things?
Well, what's interesting with this particular student is she asked me a question, or kind of made a comment / question, because she was trying to avoid her question. Because I think her question was, I think she was afraid it was going to be like too forward.
Yeah.
And I kind of told her, just go ahead and ask it. It's okay.
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation. They were really pleased at the end of our conversation how it went. Yeah. And so I think one thing I'm always trying to do is let people know, like, look, you don't have to worry about offending me. Like, let's just be real and let's talk about it. So often in the culture, it's like, if we want to be friends, we can't talk about things we disagree with. And I'm like the opposite. Like, I literally have a job that's like, I'm disagreeing with a lot of people that I'm talking to, like, and I'm challenging ideas and challenging thoughts. So I'm always like trying to let people know that it's good to do that, and I welcome you doing that, and I want to hear where you're at. So I think I want to let people know that it's okay to ask that and create a space where they feel like it's okay to do that. Yeah. So as she was kind of slowly starting to do it, I would, try and encourage her. Okay, so are you kind of thinking this way and think this, and then she could kind of clarify further as she went along. Yeah. But I think, I think this is definitely the art of what's lost in our culture. Right behind in my like office area at my house, there is a painting of Raphael's School of Athens. And it's my favorite painting. And it's this painting, apparently it's hanging in the Vatican, and John in the Vatican, I think he drew it in the Sistine Chapel. I don't know, I haven't seen it. But it's my favorite because it shows a bunch of different philosophers and mathematicians and whoever, men and women, different parts of the world, even because they look like they're different ethnicities. But they're all arguing and debating different ideas. And it's really cool to watch because it's like, basically you see that they're challenging each other and this one's challenging each other, but they're interested and they're looking and they're learning, and what they do is they see this as a joyful thing to engage in opposing views and engage with things that, like, you say that, but I think you have a hole here, I think you have an argument here. And I think there's a beauty to that because this is how we learn, this is how we study, it's how we grow. It's how we do everything. Somebody has an idea and you challenge it in science, you challenge it in mathematics, you challenge it, you got to work it out, work through the problem until we get it exactly how it needs to go. And so I think just kind of modeling that, like, it's okay to say something that you think I might disagree with. I'm not going to flip out. Yeah. This is good for all of civilization, for us as humans. And so I think that can be helpful when somebody's really struggling to kind of get a question out. I'm just trying to really listen to what might be behind all of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Kind of along these lines, and maybe you've already covered it some, but this winter I was talking with some of our students and our graduates, and a lot of their peers aren't asking questions. They're not wrestling. How do you meet someone you observe that they're in a bad place? You see, the trajectory of their life. You see how sad they really are, how not satisfied with their life they are, but they're not at the point yet where they're asking questions. How do you engage with someone like that when kind of they leave Summit with all these questions and you're engaging in conversation and stuff? What happens when you walk into a subculture, a community group, classroom, a friend group, where really they're more apathetic? Do you have a strategy for challenging and overcoming that apathy without being that person that's just annoying? Would you just shut up and leave us alone?
Yeah, so like the person who's just like, I don't really care if there's a God or not, I'm really not interested, right? This has always been one of the hardest kind of people I think to speak to because, they're just kind of like, whatever. So I was a hockey player, and the way I kind of think about it is there's this line in hockey called the blue line, and there's multiple lines, but there's like 2 blue lines. And basically, when you're on one side on the blue line, you're offside. When you're on the other side, you're onside. And so what people will sometimes do is they'll do what's called straddling the blue line, and they'll have one leg offside and one leg onside. So they're in kind of a no man's land. They're not off, but they're not on, so you can't get called on penalty. And so they kind of just straddle it until it's the right time for them to go so that they can be onside. And I feel like sometimes people who are apathetic kind of just do that. They just kind of roll along, trying to straddle that blue line. I think the agnostic kind of does this too. But the reality that everybody needs to realize is you may not want to process through these ideas, but something is still influencing the way that you engage with a person, how you see them as valuable or not, or how, whether or not you wake up in the morning and hug your neighbor or punch your neighbor, whether you think that what you do as a job has meaning. Actually, is there an ultimate purpose to your life? Does it matter that you even existed, right? Something is influencing these kind of views, how we got here, what happens when we die, whether that's you, whether it's some broken philosophy or broken piece of religion you've pieced together. But so you can be apathetic, but that doesn't mean that you are absent, that you've somehow abstained from engaging in these larger ideas and concepts of how do we live as humans in this world, because all of these issues are just with morality and value, and all these things are issues that we face every single day. So you may be apathetic about God, but the minute you take a stand for justice in any situation, you've now implied a moral right and wrong. Yeah. You've now implied that there is a wrong that's happened to a human, and humans are important. Nobody's fighting for the justice of ants, because ants have a different value than humans. Right. But you're implying that if you're fighting for the justice of humans, well, you're implying that humans have value. Where are you getting that from? You maintain your apathetic view. So one thing I like to let people know, once again, there's an inconsistency here with what you're saying. Yeah. And you can not want to deal with these kind of things, but it doesn't mean that you are somehow still not engaged in dealing with it. Yeah. Because all these bigger questions impact your life, and you're making decisions about them every day. Yeah, you are living in accordance with a worldview. Exactly. Everybody is. Everybody is. Yeah. To some capacity, right? Absolutely. So what are, right now, if you have the ear of the student Summit graduates, what are you seeing? How do they need to be prepared? What are some of the subjects? I mean, because there's so many, and there's, really as many worldviews as there are people in the world, and they ask so many different questions. But if you could say, here are some things I'm seeing that you guys ought to study up on, that you ought to get prepared for, that you ought to have thought about. And it may be the things that are just universal and you just see so continuously and steadily that these are just common questions to men that it's good to have ready answers for. Yeah. Or maybe it's more the cultural moment. Either way, what are some of those things that these students might want to put on their list of topics to be ready to answer for what they have? So I think I would spend time processing through some of the sexuality stuff. Yeah. Sexuality and also transgenderism. A shameless plug, you go to apologetics.org, you can read my article on intersex. That might be helpful to you. But yeah, I think those two right now are really big. And part of the reason why, especially transgenderism, I think is such a big one and worth looking into is because of all the mental health components of it. Yeah. Because I think we also have a large mental health problem. And so I think kind of looking into some of these things are helpful because it helps you to know the audience to whom you're speaking to, helps you know the framework and what's going on in the context of those that you speak to. So I think just kind of spending some time looking into some of those things can be really helpful. I think also, if somebody was to ask you the question, why should I choose Christianity versus other religions? They've heard this whole Jesus died on a cross thing. They've heard that. That's not new. They've heard this whole, God dies for your sins or stuff like that. I would encourage you to maybe see if you could look through New Testament, Old Testament, whatever, and find a story in there that you really find beautiful, that you really impacts you, because you're going to be better at telling it if it really means something to you. And see if there's a way that you can use this to help demonstrate that Christianity is really beautiful, really, really good. That's something you want to be true. For me, it's kind of in the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery. And I love that story because I love the way that Jesus challenges the religious leaders and in a sense protects the sinner by saying, I affirm your values still. Don't do this again, but I'm not going to let them publicly shame you and destroy you and humiliate you. Like, I'm in a sense going to protect you. I'm going to almost take on your humiliation and shame on me. And to me, I feel like that really connects with the culture. And I feel like I can use a story like that to help recognizing that so many people feel shame. They don't feel seen. They don't feel valued. And help them to know there's a God who actually does see you as you are and still finds you beautiful. Yeah. And so I would encourage them encourage you guys to find a story that works for you like that would really help you to be able to share the gospel in a way that maybe they haven't heard before. And I think people are looking for a fresh way to see Jesus, a fresh way to see this as good and beautiful. And so I would really encourage you to spend time doing that. And in terms of other topics, I don't know. I just really encourage people to study theology, actually. Yeah. I spend a lot more time studying theology than I do apologetics. Yeah. I really just try and study the word. I remember I was spending so much time trying to get through a really hard book, philosophy book on the meaning of life. And it's one of those books where you read like a paragraph a day because that's all your brain can process. And then one day I was sitting there reading Ecclesiastes and I'm like, this speaks to the meaninglessness of life. Mm-hmm. And it was so much easier to understand. Like, why am I reading this book over here when Ecclesiastes has the answer? Yeah. And so I guess I would really encourage students to make sure that you are spending time getting your answers first from the Bible, because all these books are pulling from there anyways. So go to the primary source, pull your answers from there, use any kind of apologetics books and things like that to support what you're doing. But let the Lord teach you from there. And from there, you'll get answers to so many things. You'll get answers to the meaninglessness of life. You'll get answers to, a question I got today. They sacrifice all these lambs in the Old Testament. Why aren't we still doing those things today? Well, when you read your Bible, you understand there's a shift. Read Hebrews, a shift between the Old Testament and New Testament, and Jesus being the final lamb. Like you learn that so many of the questions that I get asked actually can be answered by just understanding Christianity and what it teaches. And so I would say if you study that, you're going to actually be ready for a plethora of topics.
Yeah, that's really good. The last book study we had was with Jason Minez on hijacking Jesus. And that was one of the things he strongly encouraged. Like, you need to know the Word of God. Yeah. You need to hide it in your heart. You need to understand it. You need to rejoice in it. And I think, I love that you mentioned find a story too, because I don't know how many people in the world today are as moved by propositional truth as we think they would be. They're far more moved by story, by their imaginations being captured, by their affections being stirred. And the Bible is a story. It's a beautiful story of the whole world and all of reality. But those little stories in it, particularly in the New Testament, of seeing Jesus and his character shine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Just new, fresh ways to help people to know about Jesus, right? And you got to remember, a lot of people don't really know as much about Christianity as you think they might. They're just reading this little Google article on it or this little article this person wrote on it, but they're really not engaging with the Bible. So when you start pulling out these stories about Jesus, it's just like, wow, he's like that. A lot of them really haven't engaged with those before. Yeah. And that's just a new way to look at him, really, for so many people. Yeah. And so I think that's really important. I think also, too, the suffering question never goes away. Yeah. Doing this 10 years, the suffering question is there. It will always be there. Philosophers have been dealing with this for generations or thousands of years. I mean, it's the big, good God, powerful God, but there's evil. What do we do? And once again, I encourage people to read Job. I think, God deals with suffering in Job, and he deals with suffering by not telling Job why. In chapter 38 through 42 or 41, when God speaks, he doesn't tell Job why he's going through his suffering. And so essentially God is answering the question of why do you allow suffering by saying you don't need to know the answer why, but you need to know that I'm here. You need to know that I'm still God. You need to know that I'm still the creator. You need to be reminded of my power. You need to be reminded of my goodness. That's what you need right now, not an answer. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the reason why we are always asking this, trying to find an answer to this question of suffering is because we're looking for an answer that's somehow going to make us feel, somehow going to make the suffering not hurt anymore. It's not going to make it painful anymore. And there should be no answer that ever makes suffering not painful. Like, we should always cry or grieve when we see a starving child. We should always cry with someone who's got a terminal cancer diagnosis and their heart is broken. It is okay to be sad at suffering. Don't look for an answer that's going to make it okay. And I think that's why God answers it in a very unique way. And so, once again, if you know the scriptures, then you can therefore answer these questions of suffering using things like Job, using how God responds to suffering, these things. So I would say spend time looking at suffering. I just think it's a good one to really think through. And yeah, I'm really for that.
Yeah, that's good. Well, it's getting late. I want to honor your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you're willing, we'll have to arrange a time to come back and we can get on live.
That'd be great.
And we can see them face to face.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love talking with you guys.
Some good Q&A.
Yeah, do some Q&A. I like that.
Yeah. And make you shine.
I like it.
But thank you so much. If you had one final word of encouragement, what would you give them before we go?
Stand strong, young soldiers. Hold your ground. It is an era right now that is, I get that there's so many things that look so appeasing to you in the culture, but trust me, the stuff that's coming out now about the effects of social media on our mental health are are multiple sources, multiple reports, how bad social media is for our mental health. Also, at the same time, there's some stuff coming out now that's talking about how mental health has been destigmatized, therapy has been destigmatized, more and more people are getting counseling than ever before, more and more people are getting medication than ever before, and yet our mental health and depression rates and anxiety rates and our suicide rates are higher than they've ever been. In other words, we are not helping people. The way that humans are striving and working to help people isn't working. And so now they're trying to figure out what have we done wrong. And so all that to say is, whether you're a Christian or not, you recognize the problems that exist in this world. We're all trying to come up with solutions. And what I find amazing is that over and over, I think when people say to me, what convinces you about Christianity that it's true? It's not really resurrection stuff and, morality stuff and origin stuff. It really isn't that as much as it's like the Bible just keeps working. Like, it just keeps answering the questions that people have, and it works. When it tells us to forgive, and you see the power of forgiveness when somebody forgives somebody who's murdered somebody they love, and you see these play out in a courtroom, or you see it play out in a different situation, you see how that act of forgiveness impacts everybody around you. You're like, this is not human. This is not a human command. There's no way humans would come up with this. And you see it work. It's these kind of things that help me to know the Bible is true. And so I would encourage you, the culture is going to try and pull you, but trust me, they are running actually from where they're trying to pull you towards, and they're looking for answers. So stand strong, hold your ground, don't get drawn away by these things, because they're looking for answers, and many are coming running to us.
Yeah, that's a great point. Multiple times this weekend we talked about
yes,
the reality
we have.
Of a transformed life,
yep.
Someone who models
yep.
the fruit of the Spirit,
yep.
who is satisfied with Jesus.
Yeah.
And so when people are looking for satisfaction, it's not that rational, intellectual answer, though it's true and needs to be known and believed. It's seeing someone else satisfied.
Yes.
Truly satisfied
yeah,
with Christ. And
exactly.
They go, now tell me about that.
Yeah.
And how is this possible?
Yeah.
And that you can't fake that.
Yeah. It's
got to be real. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the song, we were talking about this too, but the song that's been in my head for the last several months as I've been watching everything crumble in the world is that Cody Carnes song, Christ is my firm foundation, the rock upon which I stand. When everything around me is shaken, I've never been more glad that I've built my faith in Jesus or my trust in Jesus, however it goes. But this idea that you know, that you can actually, as everything else is shaking, you're okay because your foundation is firm. And you don't understand how rare and how much people are, how rare that is to have a foundation in this culture, but how much people are craving a foundation. And you have it. And so as I'm watching everything crumble, watching people just not know up from down and right from wrong and left from right, it's like my world, my inner world isn't spinning because my foundation is the same. This has all been shaken, but I'm good. And I think that that's why so many people are just feeling so uncertain, I guess, about where they are.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so thankful. I'm just thankful, really, that I have a foundation to stand on.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to meeting you guys.
Yeah.